So what are you expecting in this match? We're going to be doing Leela and Engineering the Future first. When I look at this matchup, I think a lot of things are determined by the first couple of turns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Leela gets a strong start, then HB's in trouble. Right?
Does she have the snowball start where you just don't get to play cards and they all end up in your hand?
And so HB, in this opening hand, Elliot's really looking for a couple of pieces of ice. He doesn't want to give free accesses here. And if he has just 2 pieces of ice in economy, that's all he's dropping, I think.
And the big,
HQ
to
and
me,
RD.
the opening play and the big card that Jon's got, he's got 2 DDoS, and DDoS setting up an opening siphon or multi-access play, it can just completely break you.
See, this is good for Elliot. He's got his executive boot camp, which he loves running. So he's actually going to do pretty well against a lot of these, even these DDoS decks.
Yeah, that's huge.
So I think he's probably going to keep that hand. Yeah, Jon, I saw a levy in hand, I think. Which surprised me. Yeah, 1 levy.
And he's got what I think is, to me, the premier criminal draw engine. It's not the best, but he's got 3 Fisk Investment Seminar, 3
Great
Drug
card.
Dealer. So he is going to be able to move through his deck pretty quick. I think with Leela, Fisk Investment, I think hurts a little less because you are bouncing cards back to hand. And I think when she sets up the type of game that she wants to, where you just don't get to play and you get put under pressure so early, she does really well. So we got an opening turn, we got hedge fund, and it looks like we got some ice. So that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Elliot wants, right? He's got his hedge fund, he's got an EBC that he'll probably drop next turn, although his ice is not cheap right now. That looks like a Turing, and couldn't tell what the other one was, but 2 not huge pieces of ice.
So,
wow, interesting. So he's going to give Jon a free look at HQ, which he doesn't really care about because there are no agendas in there.
Yeah, well, I don't see any multi-access, which is fortunate, but even if you get one off the top.
The siphon threat is also real there. So that was a very interesting play, but I guess Elliot just knows if he can start pumping out.
Ooh, Fisk a turn too late, because that probably would have yielded him an account siphon or 5. So, well, let's see. All right.
Elliot gets fortunate there. I mean, I guess, you got to trust your deck at some point here. But
yeah, what's going to be really interesting is the Fisk Investment Seminar, when Elliot needs to dig for ice he can put. I don't know that if Jon plays Fisk next turn, this is the downside of the card, right? It could help your opponent get set up sometimes more than it helps.
Well, and especially it looks like Elliot is just going to be able to start using this EBC. He'll probably use it immediately this turn. Although with the Turing down, you might think about waiting. That's a good ice to force the runner to face check with Faust, but nope, he's going to do it. So
this is nice. I mean, he's protected. He's got a decent remote set.
For that remote at least. And knowing Elliot, he's going to look for 3 or 4 pieces of ice to drop down before he tries to start scoring out.
Yeah, and this is the great part about executive boot camp against Leela is now she has 0 targets at this point, which is huge.
Yeah, it's really great tech against sort of some of the Faust matchups as well. But yeah, definitely the ice denial is tough when you're playing against EBC, and this is Elliot's ideal start against this deck. So he's in a good spot.
And this is where Criminal sometimes can struggle. If all this ice that he's putting down gets rezzed, then Criminal a lot of times doesn't have the tools to get through the long game. Faust might get worn out. Oh, DLR. Okay, this could get interesting.
So interestingly enough, Jon draws 2 cards instead of playing a Fisk. I guess I didn't see how many cards Elliot ended with, but
and
maybe just wasn't the right time for it.
Okay, well, this is real good for Elliot.
Yeah. With 3 cards in hand for the court, he doesn't want to drop Fisk there. So now Elliot's going to draw 2 cards, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Jon pop it.
Yeah. Vikram is also probably going to do some work. I mean, that is just an absolute monster of a card. Once it just clogs up centrals, it's just so annoying and so difficult to pay through forever. And it's a great counter against Faust. I mean, it costs a lot for Faust to make its way through a Vikram.
And Elliot has been sort of the champion of running all of this next ice. He's been doing it for months. We've been playtesting a lot together. Sort of before I took a break, and he hasn't gone away from it, as you can see here. And so I think the addition of these strong HB ice is really helping him out.
And with Parasite hitting the most wanted list, right, it's that much more difficult to see it out of non-Anarch identities, even in Shaper. Certainly out of Criminal. I barely see Parasite at all, and so you kind of have that understanding that this next ice is going to stick on the board as long as it gets rezzed, and it looks like with the executive boot camp being protected at this point, that's not going to be a problem.
And so Jon at this point, doing probably the smart thing is he knows he can't really start snowballing with Leela, so he's just digging to get set up. He's got Kate running. He's getting all the pieces out for when he does drop the DLR.
Yeah.
So he's not in a bad spot. Elliot hasn't started, rushing a score, which I think at this point he should maybe consider. He hasn't seen any breakers or any tutors yet. So
but this is great. He's got money. He is he's protected somewhat, at least in HQ. I'd want to get another piece of ice just like that to protect, to really seal off that siphon threat. Or at least make Jon go find some breakers before he could turn that on. But yeah, Elliot's in great shape. But we see the wireless net pavilion. It's curious. I actually have been playing a Laramie deck with DLR, and I think it's been very effective. I've won a lot with it. But a lot of people I think ran away from the DLR decks after wireless net pavilion got made unique. But I still think it's a very powerful deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is when we first sort of put that deck together, it was still beating people pretty thoroughly. So wireless net pavilion only made that happen better.
Yeah, it just made it harder to come back.
So I think it's still a very strong deck when it fires. The issue is, can you get it to fire fast enough? And in this meta, that's been tough. And part of the reason that I think Elliot should probably consider getting stuff scored here. But now that he maybe knows that's coming,
so
he
just
sits back and builds a wall.
He's got a read over there. He's like, wait, people still play this card?
Yeah,
no, you brought DLR back? So Jon at this point, he's not tagged, but he's just, I think, getting himself set up to be able to turn on the hitting the mill button. All right, so we got Marcus that's joined the party. But I agree. I think at this point, getting a Marcus or something over that Turing and trying to start putting pressure to score, because if you just let the DLR deck sit back, get the fall guys out and get the setup,
then he's going to get
you
through
don't win.
Eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the thing that I will say. I know Elliot well enough that that's going to be a tough decision for him to make.
Sure. All right, there we go. I like this play.
But yeah, so he's going to take another turn. I think that's fine. Get one more piece of ice rezzed, probably the one either in front of R&D or in front. I think it's 6 of 1. He's happy with either, and then maybe start scoring. But with the Fisk drop, it's going to be hard to do too.
All right, the inside jobs are huge. I think coming into the hand. There's no protection assets. I know that Elliot does run Ash and Caprice.
I think we saw
2 of each.
I think we saw Alias and Faust in hand as well. So he's got some ways to get in. No, it couldn't be Alias. It's Passport or Breach.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly does Elliot start jamming out agendas and forcing Jon to run. And does Jon start to challenge those remotes, knowing that, it's not going to have that snowball Leela game because the executive boot camp's been doing a lot of work?
Well, but at this point, he's got a little bit of an economy built up. He's got the pieces in hand sort of to start getting there. And so now he can start, applying that pressure, as you said. So it's just a matter of when he wants to strike. Well, he might wait until Elliot tries to start scoring out, because then Elliot has to make some really tough decisions.
Yeah, I'm looking at the deck list. I don't see Josh B on the list for Jon. So it looks like the team is going to be as assembled as it's going to be, of getting the Fall Guy, Data Leak Reversal, and Wireless Net Pavilion.
So he's going to rely on an account siphon here at some point, which is, I guess, probably what he's looking for.
But yeah, Elliot's got nice protection on HQ. I mean,
also has a lot of cards in hand, though. So can't really start scoring out now unless he's okay with dropping a few of them. And he's already popped the Jackson. So we saw, I think, Global Food and maybe Vitruvius in hand.
Yes, I think I saw another Jackson in hand. I think I saw an alt art creeping out. So I'm curious whether he tries
that
to
throws me
get
off
that going
all the time. I love alt art cards, but I got to say, the plain art Jackson is beautiful to me. I love it, and we'll never not play it. But yeah, he'll go for it.
All right, so he's trashing it rather than going to get an asset, which I guess with a flooded hand, you wouldn't be able to hold on to it in all likelihood.
And with
anyway.
one Jackson already in hand, that gets your 3 Jacksons in hand or in play pretty quickly. So maybe thinking about just conserving that last one.
I mean, to me at this point, I think that Ichi's could be very valuable. Maybe the Marcus, because you haven't seen much. I think the Ichi against Faust, though, is a great matchup.
Do we know what he dropped in front of Turing?
I do. I think it might have been the Vikram, actually. I think he was still holding that. Which, again, if you go Ichi, Vikram, Turing, that's a nasty server for a Faust deck to play against.
That being said, Elliot is not on all of the monies yet.
True.
So
very true.
Has to be a little careful about being able to afford everything.
Yeah, and he's had a Breaker Bay, but have not seen any of the sexy robots that'll get him rolling in the money.
But he drops a piece of ice in that server that will eventually be the economy server.
Yep.
So, okay, so it is Breach.
And I like this. I think one of the advantages of playing the criminal DLR decks, when I played my Fisk deck, it is 1 Faust, 1 Passport, 1 Breach. And I do like having, I'll call it the real breakers to enable the account siphon and to let you get into archives and score the winning points after DLR does its thing. So I do like that inclusion in Jon's deck.
Yeah, and he's just having to decide here. He can assume pretty safely that that's an agenda back there. or at least there's an agenda in hand that's ready to score.
And he's got the paparazzi, right? When you play HB, you don't need
siphon.
the meat damage prevention,
Right.
technically. You might turn on the tag. I don't know if he wants to try the account siphon and pay through that. It certainly would do some work at this point.
Yes, it would. And so I think that was the decision he was making, is should he try and challenge that server directly, or should he just try and keep setting up to fire off sort of his game plan?
Absolutely.
And so he drew the account siphon, gives him some good options here. Question is whether or not right now is the right time.
Yeah, because Breach is going to be...
This would be a click 4 account siphon if he takes money off of Katie.
Because Breach will get through the next silver, right? He's got 3 subroutines at this point because of the Mother Goddess, so it'll do work on the silver.
Yeah, so he'll just install that instead and wait until next turn. Give Elliot maybe the score. Oh, no, he will siphon.
All right, we're going to siphon.
I don't know how to count, clearly, so there's that.
So we pump for 1, break for 2 cards, and now we pay some Breach money, and then we get some money.
And it's pretty ideal for Breach to get through. That's silver. Yep, Elliot recognizing that that's not great for him.
So right, this is the point where I think Jon's got a really solid turn of attacking because Archives is still open. He's going to have an entire turn to DLR because Elliot can't break it all. He can't destroy everything.
He can destroy one thing, and the Fall Guy will save it. So.
Yep. Yeah, so Jon saying, oh, come at me, bro. Scorch me out.
Elliot would love to have Scorch right now.
Yeah. That
sadly,
HP Scorch deck, so common.
Only drew his 3rd and final Jackson.
Yeah.
So really not looking great for him in terms of being able to do things.
All of the pedophile Jackson Altart is in the hand.
It's all there.
It's all there.
It's ready for all you kids on stream. But he's just going to go for it. He's just going to go for the score, force Jon to come in to that server.
Now, here's the problem, right? We don't have Drug Dealer going to get Jon passive cards, but you got to believe that there's a Fisk. That's going to get him an account siphon in the not-too-distant future.
Sure.
So I'm curious.
I mean, this comes down to luck of the draw, really.
Don't you hit the DLR button and just hit the win button, right?
But I think he knows on 5 credits, Elliot can score this agenda out, and if he has more agendas in hand, then he can just keep scoring.
Oh, I'm just hitting that mill button.
But
Archives is
personally,
open?
yeah, I think that's the right play here. But then it comes down to, does he hit the agendas first, or does Elliot? So that's tough. But yeah, I'm amazed that he didn't.
I like winning. I like winning a lot, actually. And when you hit that DLR button, it tends to put agendas where you can't score them if you're the corp. So that's an interesting play. But he does have. I think he read that as Jackson. But I like to put the pressure on to make him use said Jackson and make him have it.
He didn't over-advance Vitruvius, either because he's going...
Yeah, so he bounced the Vikram.
Right. But it's interesting that with DLR and tags on the table, he didn't over-advance the Vitruvius.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess because you don't want to use that last click, and then have Leela bounce something important.
And this is where, even if Jackson's on the board, right? I mean, this is your win condition. Data Leak Reversal is how you win the game, and so it's like make him beat you at this point and make him go broke.
And so now, Elliot might have played this really well, actually, dropping that Eve into the scoring server.
Oh, yeah.
Might force Jon in there, and Faust on Turing is rough until you play the inside job.
Yeah, so we inside job over
so
Turing.
There's that.
And he's not rezzing.
So he sees the Eve.
Okay. So typically you read, I mean, I think he knew that Jon might have, it doesn't matter either way, and that if he's going to trash it, whether it's rezzed or not, it costs him the same.
And Elliot is happy to see that inside job gone for that purpose. So.
And Elliot's got another hedge fund in hand, which is really nice. I mean, you can debate whether you want to put your opponent back to where Siphon is profitable, but still, I think Elliot is at a point in the game where he can still be threatened, but if you get a Caprice down behind that Turing, this is as good a shape as you're going to be in. Your centrals are secure. You're not going to lose the game. I still would like to see some kind of protection on Archives, just so you make him have something. And I know Faust is there. I know Breach is there, but to me, I still like not. If you're going to insta-lose off of one bad turn of DLRing, I like to at least make them have all their breakers out.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, this was the bad situation we were talking about, where he's forced to use 2 Jacksons already. The DLR hasn't even started firing. He's got the 3rd in hand, so these Jacksons might be out of the game pretty quickly, and that's going to put him a little bit behind the 8 ball. But again, he still has global food in hand. So he could start scoring that out if he gets. He's in not a terrible position right now if he drops another piece of ice on that scoring server.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think that this is why you just kind of DLR, right?
Yeah.
He put back in 3 non-agendas. Well, it's not the end of the world, and you want to mill as many cards as possible. Those are 3 cards that
Elliot
are probably going to get milled again, and it's just not going to be. It's not going to be the agendas you want. You want a high density of agendas when you get to the long game.
And those are cards that Elliot, when he draws them, is going to be happy to see because all 3 of those are cards that he's
That's
using
exactly
for
right.
his economy. And so Jon's going to come into HQ for single access.
Interesting.
Is that what he's doing?
Single access. I don't know. When you have DLR,
Interesting.
win the game. Just win the game, folks. It's a good card, I promise. Because instead of seeing a card out of the hand, you can just see a card in the trash, and they don't get to play it anymore. Whereas Ichi, that's going to get played.
And now you know it's there, I guess, but it's an HB deck. You know it's there. But
All
Elliot now has the game in hand if he can find the money and just ice up that scoring server.
And I think the reason Jon did that, right, is he saw the 3 things that got shuffled back in were not agendas. So I think he read, hey, I've made him draw a lot of cards. He's only scored 1. He's got to have a bunch in hand. So I get the read, and I don't want to criticize the decision, but it's certainly one of those where when you're just going to see 1 card at a time, you just kind of say, I have DLR on the board. Let me spend my clicks just killing cards and getting towards my victory.
Well, we'll see where he goes from here. Elliot happy to drop down an Adonis and a hedge fund and then re-ice that server. And when that sort of all finishes up, he'll have money and he has the agendas in hand to start scoring out for the win.
I still haven't seen an Ash or Caprice, too. So if he gets that and seals off that remote, I mean, that remote's done at that point. Right. I don't think Jon can profitably run a remote that he's going to have to go back multiple times once you're getting the Faust tax going.
Now, I might be mistaken here, but I think I saw Elliot just drop an agenda in archives.
Interesting.
Which, I mean, he had 3 in hand.
Did he? And it's not Jackson in the remote, right?
It's not. It's Adonis. And so maybe I'm crazy. I might be actually insane and not have seen what I thought I saw.
Let's draw them cards.
But now Elliot's going to be forced to draw 3 more, which could be rough.
So, I mean, DDoS is kind of irrelevant. I think that's just Faust food at this point. I don't know that really does you too much.
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't help you out. But that's why Jon's happy to draw it, I think, right now, because he knows he's going to need to get in again at least 2 more times into HQ if he's going to keep Elliot poor.
Again, Elliot's in, I think, reasonably good shape. Has not seen one of those protection upgrades, but still, he's got points on the board. I haven't seen a legwork, and I'm trying to look at Jon's deck to see if there's anything to get him into HQ on the multi-access.
He has HQ interface, one of, and that's it. But he hasn't seen it. And the only thing that worries me is that Elliot has dropped sort of free points in archives with no Jackson on the table. And Leela,
I'm very interested. I mean, Elliot has not tried to trash the DLR stuff, but Jon hasn't really used it. So it's just weird. It's like you've got this huge threat on the board that nobody seems to be paying attention to. Okay, so now we're hitting the win button a little bit. There you go. Just tap that card. Let it do what it does. And I'm curious whether Elliot decides to respond to that, because if he gets Adonis going, I mean, that'll drain his credits a little bit.
And so there.
Okay, he called him.
Yeah, and that wasn't a DLR mill. That was Elliot dropping that from hand.
And we bounced the Adonis.
So that choice coming back to bite him.
Yeah, because that's a nice Leela play to bounce that Adonis.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was going to put Elliot in the position where he could start scoring out those points from hand. And so I think that was really a questionable decision.
Now, one thing that I like in Elliot's deck that we haven't seen yet, he does have a 1 of Biotic Labor in his deck. Yeah, so that could be huge in terms of closing out a game.
Yeah, absolutely will be the game closer. The thing is, he needs to get to the point where he can close the game out.
You can't get your deck put in archives and
he's got the points in hand, and he's still got money. So I think he needs to sort of be trying to get to that position where he can score. He knows Jon is just going to keep forcing him to take cards.
All right, here's ABT on the board. Okay, so we're going to do the advanced concept hopper.
Advanced concept hopper. That makes sense as well.
I like that.
That's going to help him stay ahead.
I think that is an agenda that it's way better when you score it early. I think that at this point with DLR on the board, the threat is so real of just getting milled out. It's not going to have a lot of turns to really give you value. And I kind of would have liked to see the ABT a little bit more, because if you fire an ABT, and again, you know my theory about firing ABT.
You know I'm with you.
You hit that button that gets you free ice. But against Leela, that could be potentially huge if he decided to fire it. And it could be right not to, but... So, yeah, now we're just hitting the DLR button.
Yeah, Jon finally doing it. Might be a little too late. just because Elliot has the points in hand he needs to score.
Yeah,
Elliot gonna take a look. He sees the Caprice.
Yeah.
There's a hedge fund that he really would have liked to have, but otherwise, pretty happy with that set of mills. I think.
You know, at this point, I always, this is something I struggle with sometimes as a DLR player. The temptation is to mill 3 and then check for 4. A lot of times I just say mill 4, go.
Yeah. And as somebody who has played that deck thoroughly, I can tell you that is generally the correct choice.
Yeah.
You know he's going to have a third Jackson, but you've already used 2. That's great for you. Just mill him out.
Well, it's funny. So Elliot's drawing tons of agendas at this point, but the reality is that's where you want him.
Yeah, that's great for him. And now that he's got this, every time Jon runs, he's keeping his economy a little safe. So.
All right, so we bounce.
So the Jackson gets bounced, which is great for Jon. So Elliot's got to be very careful about what he's dropping into archives now, and he's going to think about dropping the Adonis.
I think, I'd pitch the ice for sure, and that's fine.
He keeps the archive memories, so that's a more versatile choice.
I like that hand at this point.
Yeah, and he can go archive memories for hedge fund, just to keep the money up. And I think that, honestly, will get him there at this point. Yeah, if he scores that Global Food Initiative, game's over.
So Jon's trying to read how many Jacksons are out of the game. He reads that whatever he bounced, I think he, just based on his comments, I think he thinks that's what he just bounced back to Elliot's hand. So I think he's just trying to figure out, do I continue to mill and go on that plan, or do I try to play for the long game or threaten the remote? Because clearly with 4 points scored, I mean, he's under the gun.
You talked about DDoS sort of being not helpful for him, but in this case, that scoring server is pretty vulnerable to it. Interestingly
enough. It could be. Now, Turing is still going to do some work here.
And he will drop it. But yeah, I mean, but he knows he can get through Turing. He's got the cards to do it.
Well, Faust though.
Oh, right, Faust. Sorry, AI breaker. So
but
that's
he could spend his whole turn. I mean, it's not as long as he runs click 1 at this point. I mean, he could still walk through a Turing.
In fact, actually, having looked now back at Jon's deck, he doesn't have a remote breaker for that.
No, and I don't play it either. For when I play Fist deck, you just say, hey, I'm gonna get into centrals. I'm gonna siphon. I'm gonna set up DLR, and you can do whatever you want to with your remotes. If Inside Job and Faust can't get me there, then so be it.
Well, and the account siphon has gotten him there. It's gotten him the tags. It's gotten him the DLR online, and he just needs to keep using it.
Yeah.
And the sad reality is I think he's sort of hit it a little too late. So we'll see.
But that is the thing about DLR. Now, we've seen Global Food Initiative. So the problem with that agenda is that you've got to score 3 agendas rather than 2. You're not you can't hope to top deck a 3-pointer. But I still think that it's very reasonable at this point to just say, I'm going to mill 4, and I've got 2 turns of 8 cards. I need 3 of them to be agendas. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation.
On the flip side, Elliot sees the DDoS. He knows his remote server is vulnerable. If Jon just runs click 1 firing DDoS, then he can walk into that remote. So that's
very
the
true.
dangerous part.
No, this is great.
I
think
that's the one weakness of Turing, if it has one, right?
I like getting Jackson back into play. Don't let yourself lose off another turn. Make him beat you. Advanced Concept Hopper, you get a little bit more value off of that. But I definitely agree with getting Jackson on the board. I may have put him. I'm trying to debate whether I'd put him in the server with Turing or whether I'd put him in that other secondary remote.
Right.
He has enough money to res ice at this point, so it's
well,
a tough call.
I think maybe he was thinking he could get Jon to run it, but without any real threat there, like without any advancement counters, I think Jon is perfectly happy to just let it sit.
Okay, well, we're hitting the DLR button.
And he will score.
And I'm wondering if I don't know if Elliot's
missed. Deciding whether or not to.
Well, I don't know if he missed the advanced concept hopper because they now made a run.
Like he did, yeah.
So I think he needed a credit or a card off of that.
Yeah.
But we'll try to see if we can get that corrected. But yeah, it looks, he hit agendas, which is exactly what you want, right?
Yeah, and now the third Jackson's out of the game, but Elliot going to go get the Biotic Labor to close out, and then Caprice.
Yeah, do like getting the Caprice. She's still very valuable here.
And Elliot is fine now, seeing all these economy cards in the bin. He's got 11 credits. He's got the Concept Hopper out. He's pretty safe from Siphon.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, at this point, he just needs to play the cat and mouse game of I can't get milled. The deck's looking a little thin.
Right.
I still am amazed, and I think players forget this all so often. You can trash Fall Guy. You can trash Wireless Net Event.
Right.
I would totally trash all of those at this point and just say, I'm going to make you beat me with what you've got left in your deck.
Or honestly,
if you can set it up again, great.
Even just trash DDoS and go for the score.
Sure.
Trash, install, advance.
I think people forget about that sometimes. It's not like once they get it on the board, you can't do anything about it. And that's where Wireless Net Pavilion, you've only got 1 to fight through. It is very reasonable to go to 0 getting Adonis on the board or whatnot to get some money flowing and just take some time.
Elliot.
All right. He's just going to pressure him and say either you're going to spend your turn milling me or you're going to check these remotes, which is reasonable.
Well, yeah,
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
I guess, without the ice in hand, you can't really force the GFI win. So he's perfectly happy to drop ABT, force Jon to come in there, pop the DDoS. And so he'll get to 4 points, but then Elliot will have a scoring window.
This is where that biotic is so good, right? If he scores this, he just needs to pass turn once, and then he biotics out for the win. It's great.
Although that would have been an argument, I suppose, for leaving biotic in the bin.
This is true.
You can archive it.
This is true. That's actually a great point.
So now he's got to draw it, But, again, we'll see. See what happens. Jon having to make the decision. We saw him think about the DDoS. He's thinking about whether or not he needs to do it. But
So, we're counting the deck at this point.
So 15 cards.
Yeah, if I'm Jon, all the Jacksons are out. Hit that DLR button. Go for the win.
Yeah, I don't think he has another way to win the game, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
There you
That's
go,
what
buddy.
you do.
And again, the question is just whether or not it's too little too late. So Elliot, perfectly happy to score that ABT. Should probably look at the cards he milled.
All right, so we got Sexy Man Adonis going at this point. Always a good thing. Keep yourself a little bit further out of siphon range and make sure you've got biotic money to close out if you draw it. Okay, at this point, even I wouldn't trigger the ABT, which says something.
Because I was thinking
says
about
something.
My thought was, Elliot, look at the cards you milled. If they're not ice, consider firing it.
Oh, wait, he has that archive memories. Okay, so now we're back into hit that ABT.
I'm telling you, man, it's the best card in the game.
It is. I like free ice. Don't you like rezzing free ice?
I love rezzing 3 free Orions.
Go big or go home. 3 free, Orion for days. You could have gotten Vikram off the top. See, right? We clearly know what we're talking about here, guys.
I mean, I'm not wrong.
The agenda is not a blank 3 for 2. All right.
So all Elliot needs to do is drop ABT and score it next turn. Jon can't mill him out before then, I don't think.
No, he can't. I mean, at this point,
so he's gone through 4-5, 4-5, 4-5. Yeah, so Elliot will score out, I think, before Jon mills him.
And that's fine. I mean, all he needs to do at this point is hit the mill. He's got potential. He doesn't. I don't know that he knows about. He may or may not be thinking about the biotic and think that Elliot has it at this point. But it's perfectly reasonable to just say mill 4 and then next turn mill 3 and run.
I'm wrong. If Elliot installs, so he'll be on 5 cards at the beginning of this turn.
Yep.
He'll draw. Jon will then mill 4 in the next turn.
All right.
Elliot will be milled. So, but Jon chooses to run instead. Which nets him 4 points and bounces the important ice. So
bounce Leela ice, okay.
So Elliot's in trouble here unless he draws the biotic. So I think actually bringing the biotic back into the deck might have hurt Elliot here. Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and still, he has money. Trash the stuff.
Yeah.
Trash it.
I mean, that wins you the game.
I tell people all the time, DLR is not invincible.
Yeah.
You get to trash cards when people are tagging. People forget about that so often.
And then you have to install ABT.
Yeah, and he's spending money installing rather than trashing. Just trash. And I do like forcing action here, but at the same point in time, if I'm Jon, okay, mill some cards.
Well, at this point, because he ran last turn, he can't mill Elliot out. If he had done the math, he could have milled Elliot
mill
for the
3
win.
and check archives. That's a high percentage run at this point.
Yeah, although we know Elliot has 2 agendas in hand, I think, still.
Yep.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Because he's got, let's see,
probably
trying to look at the old agenda
running
count
10
on here.
would be my guess. So
he has got
9. He has 9.
9
So
agenda.
we see all 9.
Okay.
So the mill run is not going to win him the game. The thing is, popping DDoS walking in, probably also not going to win him the game.
Yeah, does he have an inside job in hand, or could he get an inside job back? I don't think he does.
Does he have same old thing? He has same old thing out.
He doesn't have a ton of money at this point, which is difficult. He could use the fall guy to get 2.
He can't use same old thing because it's Turing. Yeah, so that's the thing is Jon has to be able to walk in on first click.
And he might be able to, depending on what subs he's letting.
I don't know what that second piece of ice is.
Because, right, if it's an Ichi, let's think this through. If it's an Ichi and Vikram, let's say, you can take brain damage. You don't need to use any programs at this point because you're just going to click through the Turing anyway. So it is very reasonable to just say, you know what, click 1, DDoS, and run. That's a very, to me, that is still a high percentage run based on what's on the board. All right, but he's gone the mill route. Okay, And I think Elliot's got it wrapped.
Wow.
Very good game, guys. Very close.
So you see Elliot has 1 card left in his deck. If Jon had just milled 4 the previous turn instead of running, and milled 4 again this turn, Elliot loses.
Yeah.
Or if Elliot, conversely, had left Biotic in the bin, then he would have won last turn.
And this is where we say the temptation is to check, but here's the thing. At some point, you run out of Jacksons, you run out of recursion. Having those incremental 3 or 4 clicks, the agendas are going to be there at some point. Yeah. And so whether you access 20 cards at once or whether you access them 3 cards at a time, the difference is spending those clicks milling cards rather than checking when you could have just as easily waited and checked later. I think that's this game's kind of a key lesson or key illustration of where that really comes into play. So great
lesson
first
of the day,
game.
Just mill.
Really fun to watch.